want to talk now about preparedness for their effects. Joining me from Geneva is Robert Glasser, the UN Secretary-General Special Representative for Disaster Risk Reduction. And very good to talk to you, Mr. Glasser. Now, I know UN members, 2 years ago, adopted a framework for disaster risk reduction. Tell me more about that in relation, of course, to these hurricanes.
Well, that framework was a very significant agreement in which all the member states of the United Nations agreed that in the face of these rapidly escalating costs from these disasters, that they were going to do something about it. And they agreed to 7 really remarkable goals to reduce loss of life, to reduce economic damage, and others as well, to address these disasters, including hurricane risk, cyclone risk.
But one guesses, you don't even have to guess, that poorer nations are more vulnerable in that they're less able to build in this risk reduction. And I suppose it gets worse. If they are affected, then it's even harder to climb out of poverty.
Absolutely. There's a very clear correlation with loss of life and poverty. And I should say, not just in less developed countries, but in wealthy countries as well, as we saw in the case of Hurricane Katrina, as we've seen in Texas as well. People who are less resources available, they tend not to have insurance coverage, for example. Perhaps they can't afford the petrol to evacuate as quickly or as easily. So there's a clear link with poverty and exposure and vulnerability to these disasters.
Well, tell me more about poverty. No one's thinking in particular in that region of Haiti, an earthquake, then a hurricane, and people already some of the poorest in the world stuck in poverty. Yes,
and we have made enormous progress in reducing poverty, we, the countries of the world, over the last decades. But there are places where poverty is still entrenched. And we saw in Haiti, although there was loss of life in the recent storm that hit Haiti, actually the message, the story, is not the number of people killed, but it's actually the number of people who weren't killed, because there has been enormous progress in spite of the poverty in Haiti with respect to early warning, evacuation and warnings, and moving people to storm shelters and the like. And so often the news focuses on the number of people killed rather than on the progress that's been made, which has really been quite remarkable, but still a long way to go to reduce risks and costs.
Yeah, but I mean, you mentioned the United States there with Hurricane Harvey, Katrina, Sandy, so many hurricanes in the last couple of decades or so. But it's the richest country in the world. If the United States can't build in this kind of resilience, what hope for everyone else?
Well, the richest countries in the world are exposed to some enormous hazards. The US, China, Japan, as we saw during the earthquake, tsunami, and its subsequent reactor meltdown. This is one of those agendas that affects all of us. And with climate change, that will particularly be the case. The hazards, as you were commenting earlier, just before I came on, these hazards are increasing. Climate change is increasing the hazards themselves. Human activity is increasing the exposure and vulnerability to those hazards.
Mr. Glasser, great getting your thoughts. Thank you very much indeed for sparing the time to talk to us. Robert Glasser there, the UN Secretary-General's Special Representative for Disaster Risk Reduction, joining me from Geneva. And you're watching